and I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Trig. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. It's nice to see lots of people here. There's a few names that we recognise and a few schools that we know, but obviously a few people checking us out for the first time as well. So welcome. We won't take up too much of your time because we realise how busy and difficult life has been for you all recently, which is one of the reasons behind what we're currently offering. Okay. Right, I'm going to share my screen and just talk you through a little bit of who we are and how we help you. Okay, so my name is Celine and I am the Managing Director at UK Language Courses. I've been running language programmes for foreign students aged between 8 and 17 for over 20 years. So UKLC is a company that's been around for a long time. We've grown from strength to strength. And as you can see, these are the associations that we are members of. We are British Council recognised. And we have the EL Gazette Centre of Excellence that was awarded in 2019. So a little bit about who we are. Obviously, our industry, and those of you at boarding schools will possibly have companies like UKLC coming in and using your facilities over the holiday periods for letting. So you'll be familiar with our sort of operation. We are a stable business. We've been accredited by the British Council for a long time. So we have a very long and established track record in education. Some of the schools that we have been working with for 20 years. So we keep good relationships for a long time. And within our sector, we're very well known for our quality. And we're ranked 4th in the UK in the EL Gazette. And in our British Council inspections, we have received outstanding in our safeguarding policies and implementation at our last inspection. We also like to think of ourselves as quite nice people. We're open, we're honest, we're great to work with. And this is one of the reasons why we tend to develop long-term relationships with schools. We've been doing this for a long time. We've got a head office team, a lot of whom have been furloughed for quite a while now, but with a vast amount of experience of working with this age group. And also with working with boarding schools, albeit in a different context because we are usually the customer coming in to use the facilities. So why are we organising this conversation with you today and why do we think we might be able to help? Obviously, we've all been massively impacted by what has happened in the past year, us in a different way to you. From our point of view, we have normally about 5,000 foreign students who come to us either in year-round programmes at our year-round centres or through the summer period, which is a busy time for us. And as we hit the end of February, nearly a year ago, all of our groups had to cancel because they couldn't travel. And we had a summer of no students for the first time in 20 odd years. So when we hit the autumn, we were actually approached by a number of schools that we work with whose facilities we used because they had a bit of a problem when it came to October half term in what to do with their boarders, their international boarders who were in residence, who'd come back in September, but who didn't want to have to travel and quarantine and all the restrictions that were in place. So we were very pleased to help, and we put together a programme that we ran in October at these few schools to look after their boarders. And it worked really well, and it was brilliant for us because it was we were able to be operational again. We were able to do what we're good at, which is looking after young people. But we also felt a little bit like we were able to help, and the schools that we worked with were extremely grateful because the impact on schools has been enormous. And I've been watching, I've got many colleagues, friends who are heads or in senior leadership teams in schools, and really the constant change and shifting sands of the government policy has been such a stress, I have noticed, especially as we've started this term where I know quite a few people spent their Christmas holidays planning testing centres and changing the way the school was going to operate from January, only to find out with absolutely no notice that the students weren't coming back. So the feeling that we have had from the schools we talk to is that everybody is very tired. It's been a hell of an academic year. There's been an awful lot to deal with, and it's been dealt with admirably. But as we move now towards the summer term, hopefully to the reopening of school and then the summer term, there are more challenges ahead. And one of the difficulties has been the large number of international boarders who study in the UK, who've been either going back and forth or learning online from home, or who have been kept in school for quite a long time. And this seems to be presenting schools with quite a few difficulties. And obviously there's a great demand from the overseas parents to know that there's consistent care, consistent, obviously academic provision, but what is going to happen during the holiday times. We've also had a communication from a couple of schools where boarders came back in September and haven't left since, and they are concerned about hitting the 295-day rule that the Department for Education has, after which point really a school should change to a children's care home status. So this is difficult. And the other issue is maybe international students who've been away for this term, learning online from their own countries, but as the schools are going to reopen, they want to come back, but they're facing a quarantine problem. And if they come back just for the start of term and have to quarantine at the start of term, they're going to spend the first 10 days or so back in their bedrooms and back in online learning again. So these seem to be all of the things that we were hearing. The schools we provided the programs for in October have asked us again to come in at Easter. And when we looked at our capacity, we thought, well, we're used to running 10 or 11 centres and have a large operation over the summer. We could go out and offer this program to other schools if it could be of help. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, here are two of the schools that we worked with in October half term. Queen Anne's School in Reading and also Bootham School in York, with whom we have a very long-standing relationship. So as you can see, they were really happy with what happened. We delivered a program of events for them, lots of different sessions that were varied, and we put our staff, who are well-trained, very flexible and friendly, very used to dealing with young international students. And the schools were obviously a little bit nervous initially because they were used to farming out the international boarders to guardianships, to families, which is what normally happens in the holiday period, and not really being used to being open over the holiday period. So there was definitely a little bit of concern all around as to how this was going to work, but it worked really well, as you can see from the feedback, and we took feedback from the students as well, listened very carefully to them as to what they wanted to be doing during their holiday period. So as you can see, this student here, we made sure there was time for relaxation and time for study. And it was a great success. As Jenny points out from Bootham, the key thing was tailoring the schedule to fit in with the school. So every school is run in a different way. For example, in Bootham, they have a period of town leave in an afternoon when they're allowed to walk out into town when we're not in lockdown. And so it was really sort of a tailor-made, how would you like us to operate? What would you like us to do? And how can we make this work for the students that you have? So what can we actually do to help? Well, we can offer you a programme for any boarders who are currently with you. So I know that some schools have had international boarders staying. They've been doing online learning while the school has been, to all intents and purposes, shut, or there's been key workers. They've potentially had to be separated from the key workers as they're online learning in their bedrooms. And these are students that when it is the holiday time will be able to be out and about. They'll be able to partake in lots of activities. And so as varied a programme as possible for them would probably be very welcome based on how long they've spent in front of their screens. We can also provide full pastoral care for returning boarders. So for example, in one of the schools we're booked into for this summer, we have two programmes running. One will be where we go in and take over the day term finishes with the boarders who are there and start their activity programme. And at the same time, we have an arrival day for international boarders who want to come back during Easter, and their 10-day quarantine will take place at the school, and we will be looking after them. We will be working with the catering at the school to bring the food to them 3 times a day. We will be organising their supervised exercise to get them outside, and we will be putting on some online activities for them during the day to try and numb the boredom of spending the 10 days in their bedrooms. So as you can see, we can work with you to find the best solution. Everybody's situation, we've noticed, is slightly different as to how many have stayed, how many are due back. Everybody's also waiting to hear what the next announcement is. So we're very aware. We thought we would do this first webinar today for a bit of information for those who seem to be tentatively interested. And then obviously over half term, we're going to get a bit more information about when schools are going to open, which we believe will then impact on the requirements of boarding schools over the Easter period. And then, as I said, you know, we can really ensure that with some schools, if you pass the care over to us during that holiday period, that it can show that you have given over care so that you don't pass that 295-day rule of the DFE. Okay, this is just a sample program just to show you something that we've put together just for an example of 1 week at Easter, to show you the sorts of programs. What we've understood very clearly is that the students it is their holidays, and they've had a tough time as well. I have 2 at home on online learning, and holidays are very important, a bit of downtime, a bit of rest. So we've worked out a program that depends on the different year groups and ages. The higher up the school, the more independent they're allowed to be, the more down sessions they can have, and the more they can have a bit of autonomy over when they decide to participate and not. The younger age groups, really, we like them to turn up to as many sessions as possible. And we've tried to put in some really varied programs. Some of the things we do with our own international students in the summertime in our courses. Some have been new that we have developed that were very well met in October. These were study hacks sessions for the older students. Also some well-being, talking about mindset and self-care, because our young people have really been through the mill as well over the past year. And especially if they've been far from home while a lot of this has been happening, it's been quite difficult for them, or they've just arrived back having been at home for a long time. That can be difficult as well. And then quite a bit of sports and activity to get them up, to get them moving. We don't know how sedentary they've been during all of this time, and sports is very much our speciality. So as you can see, it's quite varied. We talked to the students as well. We ended up running some specific courses because they were requested by some of the students over October half term. We did have the intention of running February half term as well in a couple of schools, but with the school closures, it has not felt as necessary. And that's why we're moving our attention to Easter. But what we would do is we would work out a program like this with you that you felt was needed, or you know, make some changes and schedule it, tailor it around your you know, your particular school. Okay, so that's just, it's very much a brief introduction to who we are, to what we can offer, and if we can help you. And I can see that there's some questions that are already coming through. Okay, just let me have a little look in the Q&A. And
I've got some questions here, Celine. Do you want me to?
If you read them out and then I can answer them rather than having to look at them at the same time, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Also, I've been making some notes as they've come through. Someone said that sounds really good. We're not sure yet. We're looking at bringing. It says we're looking at bringing our boarders back early so they can complete quarantine before they start term. But we've not decided. What are the next steps if we wanted to explore this further, and what are the deadlines? How long do we have to decide? That sounds like to me.
Okay, well, obviously we said we decided to do this first meeting because we've had quite a bit of contact with schools. When we decided we could open up to more, we went out, we put an email out to people we thought would be interested. And we do think that things will change again when the next government regulations and guidelines are released about when students are expected back. So really, there's no deadline until then. I think if you liked what you heard today and thought that this was something you could have as an internal conversation in your school, you could let us know. We'd also be very happy then to set up a Zoom conversation with you. That's very much how we run things in October, because it tended to be there was quite a lot of people involved. You know, sometimes it was the head of pastoral care at the same time as maybe the head or the deputy head. And so we would have an initial conversation to say, right, this is what your needs are, these are the numbers you're thinking about, this is the sort of program you would want. So I would say the next steps would possibly be to just register interest, send us an email and say, that sounds interesting, we're happy to look at it. Deadlines wise, really we can, I think our feeling was that, the holidays start towards the end of March. So it would be for us, we would like to know the schools we're operating at, probably with 4 weeks notice, in order to do all the lead in and the preparation correctly. But that's not fixed in stone.
Is there a minimum number of boarders you'd run a programme for?
I think we'd probably want to be around the 15 mark. 15 to 20 would possibly be a minimum. What I've found in conversations I've had with people is when it is under 15 or 15, schools have felt like, well, we can cope with that with just a couple of staff. Once it goes over that, as I said, with existing tired teams and tired staff who've had a lot demanded of them, it definitely feels like something that, it would make sense to hand over and get some support in. So yes, if we're looking above 15, I think that would be interesting for us to do.
I mean, this isn't one of the questions, Liam, but it makes sense to then ask, is there a maximum?
Okay. I don't really think so. We wouldn't put a maximum, because when we run our centres in the summer, we sometimes have, up to 200 300 students, don't we? So we're not scared of maximums. We're used to running programmes for large numbers of students. I'm not sure that there's many people or anybody on here who's got boarding numbers of that amount or expecting that many back. So no, I wouldn't say there'd be a maximum.
Someone has asked about our staff, and are they DBS checked?
Okay, so our UKLC staff, so we have a real bank of staff. Obviously, we operate some year round and really peak in the summer. When we're running 10 centres with thousands of students, we will have 200 to 250 people working. So we have a bank of staff that we use, that we know well, who are all DBS checked. Or if we were recruiting any new staff, they would go through our recruitment process, which, considering that we are inspected and held accountable by the British Council, it is a rigorous process. And we would give you all the information before anybody arrived on site as to who they were, how long they've worked for us, and copies of any DBS checks you wanted to look at.
How does the billing and invoicing work, and will you deal directly with parents? That's good.
That's a really good question. And actually, the honest answer is it's worked both ways so far. So initially, the schools that we had in October, they found it was just easier to put it on the fees, and they added it to the January fees that went out, and we just invoiced the school. However, I've noticed for Easter that we've been asked to do it in both ways. Some schools have done that again. Others have said, and I think this might be something to do with the 295-day rule, they've said, well, if you're taking on pastoral care for them, we would like to suggest this is what's happening, this is what the school is suggesting that the parents do, and that they apply to us, and we invoice them, which is absolutely fine. We just then will have our own enrolment form that we would ask them to complete, and we would take the payment from the parents directly. That has just meant a little bit of discussion with the school around the accommodation and the food, because then we've been in a situation where maybe we're being invoiced by the parents, and then the school is then invoicing us for the food and the facilities that we're using, as if we're a third party let. But I think what I would say there is we're quite flexible. We've been asked to do it in both different ways, and we've actually worked a way around it with the schools we've got booked in. So we're open to however would work best for you.
What sort of lead-in and preparation is there?
Okay, that's another really good question. So if we tie in with the deadline saying we'd really want to be knowing about a month before, we know it's actually really difficult. So the schools we've already got booked in, they've gone out now to the parents with the solution saying this is what we're offering over Easter, and they've given the parents a deadline, and actually some of them are booking flights. When it's come to quarantine, we've actually fixed dates to say this is the quarantine start date, so please try and arrive on this date. Then what we have done with the schools is we've worked out a series of meetings. Who is it that we need to speak to? So, an initial meeting, obviously, I've said, which might be a bit exploratory, but once it was decided, if you wanted us to come in, we organise a series of meetings with the key people in school who need to know what it is that's being offered. We're quite happy also to do a little video or some introductory out for parents if they want to know who we are. And I think really over that lead-in time, thinking about October, there were a number of meetings and then information being passed from the pastoral team to us, because we obviously need to know everything about the students who are coming in or staying. Just not even obviously the usual, any medication or any dietary requirements or things like that at school, no, but a little bit about them as well, you know, so that our staff, when they're going in, are really aware of who they're looking after. And then we do a meeting just before, really to introduce our staff virtually before they arrive on site, with the key people that they will need to meet and be handed over to when they first arrive on site. So it's probably, I think, 3 or 4 different meetings are lead in over, you know, 2 or 3 weeks, I would say, to get everything, you know, everything correct and all the boxes ticked.
I think there was a question as well about us doing an introduction with the staff before they'd arrive on site. I know that was something we learned in October that we might find useful, wasn't it?
Yes.
There's a few questions off the same person, so I might run through them in order. Linked to the minimum number of boarders we'd run for. If there was a handful, would it be an option to join forces if there was someone locally, I suppose, or maybe not locally?
I think that is possibly an option. I mean, so far it depends on maybe the relationships then between the schools. So if you just had a handful and you wanted to contact us, we could ask the schools where we're going to be operating if they're happy for that. What I found is, and I think it's probably the same for all schools, because everybody's having such headaches and it's all so complicated, their initial feeling is a little bit like, oh, if we're doing it, we don't want to invite any more stress or any more difficulty. But if it was that they've got quite small numbers and large boarding facilities and it can be easily separated, you know, we can put that to them, we can have that conversation. It's hard to know before we asked. So if that was your situation, the person who's asked the question just had a few, I would just get in contact with us so we know where you are, how many students you're talking about, and we can always try and open up conversations if we've got any schools running, you know, not too far away.
Yeah, if the person who asked that question wants to just drop their school in the chat or Q&A, and then we can always come back to with where we're going to be operating. Mm-hmm. If there's anywhere local, I think. Is the test to release scheme still valid, or is it definitely 10 days now? I don't think I know the answer to that. Do you, Celine?
I think it's all changing. I can see there's that question and the schools acting as quarantine hotels. There's been updates, hasn't there, from the Boarding Schools Association. So we've been trying to keep an eye on that. And the schools that we are already signed up with over the holidays, they've been keeping us updated. I'm not 100% sure now. And obviously we don't know what changes there might be to come when they announce changes for schools, but also new quarantining rules. So I think for that one, that's why we thought we'd do a provisional webinar now. And then I imagine after there is the announcement, we will try and run another one of these when we've got some more concrete government advice to go on. So you'll know what you're facing from a school point of view, and we'll know exactly what's allowed. My understanding at the moment is that schools are allowed to be like the quarantining hotel. That's what I've been told. But yeah, things just seem to change so quickly, don't they? So we'll keep an eye out on that, and then we will let you know as soon as we know.
At the moment, there's just 2 more. So if anyone has any, while we answer those, if anyone else has any more questions, now's the time. So someone's put, we have an issue with the 295-day rule, and we've got a spreadsheet recording how many nights every child's been on site and stayed with us. With schools that have had that challenge, how is this a solution? And when could you start? I mean, I think the question there is, you know, could you be in Friday or Saturday at the start of holidays? Yes.
So where we've got one of the schools that we're dealing with over Easter, this is their issue. So going in on the Saturday, which I believe is the 31st of March, which is Easter Saturday, and taking over at lunchtime from their boarding staff. And then we're releasing back the day before term starts on the 24th or 25th. So the same thing there, the head of pastoral care there, I've seen it, has a spreadsheet running of every child and the number of nights that they have been in. And that was the reason that they were offering, where they were asking us to run the entire Easter period. In other schools, it has been maybe just a 2-week program to break things up and to give staff a break, which is why I say it's really tailor-made, because it very much depends on your specific situation and what the needs are of the school. It's possibly worth saying as well that this is something that we will also be offering in May half term, and due to the success of October and how good this has been in general, we are also offering some end of August pre-sessional courses, which hopefully won't be necessarily solving a COVID problem by then, but more of an introduction back and an introduction to boarding school life. So we'll send out more information about that over the coming months.
I think that's all of them, Celine. I think we've answered.
Brilliant.
Left, I think we've already answered. So, which was about the timetable and other sessions. You know, it's busy.
That's brilliant. Exactly. I think we keep it to half an hour, and just give people a taster for who we are and what we can offer. And then obviously, if you like what you've heard, or if you have any more questions at all, then please do get in contact with us. You can email me directly. It is Celine, CELINE @uklc.org, or just info@uklc.org, and we'd be happy to answer any questions and chat to you. But for the time being, thank you so much for coming and giving us your time. Hope that you are all well and coping, and we will be in touch again when we hear more about the next stage of announcements for schools. Thank you. Bye.